the Bible history. Here goes.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a massive swing at the historical frame we usually use for ancient scripture.
We are. Our sources today are making a pretty bold claim.
Which?
That the Bible isn't just a regional document, concerned with a small slice of the Middle East. Fundamentally, it's a global book.
That's a crucial distinction, isn't it? I mean, when most people hear these stories, they picture the Sea of Galilee, the Judean desert.
Exactly. But the whole premise we're digging into is that God's plan was, it was never meant to fit inside those narrow borders.
So our mission for this deep dive is to look at how that divine purpose used things like movement, culture, and especially commerce.
Right. How it used those things to stretch its influence across whole continents and over centuries.
The real aha moment for me looking at this was realizing where God's people are constantly placed geographically. They're not tucked away in some isolated corner. They are smack in the middle of massive empires, these global superpowers.
Now, it suggests God was always operating on a map that was just far bigger than anyone else recognized at the time.
And this scale, I'm guessing the sources say this wasn't an accident.
Not at all. It's presented as a divine strategy. I mean, if the core promise is that all families of the earth will be blessed, then the plan has to include a way to actually reach them.
It needs a mechanism for global exchange.
Precisely. So we're going to trace how that exchange was set up, starting with, just sheer political scale.
Okay, let's unpack this. And we can start with a really breathtaking description of geopolitical influence from the book of Esther.
Right at the beginning, Esther chapter 1, verse 1.
It sets the stage for the Persian Empire under King Ahasuerus with this geographical descriptor that just immediately blows the doors off any local mindset.
It really does. The verse says he rounded over 127 provinces.
127.
From India to Ethiopia. It's just a remarkable piece of ancient geopolitical mapping.
India to Ethiopia. I mean, that is an enormous stretch.
It is. We're talking about the largest empire known up to that point. It spanned parts of Africa, the entire Middle East, and it touched South Asia.
So for the sources we're looking at, that detail is everything. It immediately sets the stage. This is God's functional map.
A map that the people of Israel were suddenly thrust right into the middle of.
And the impact, as the sources see it, is kind of twofold. First, God's people were completely decentralized.
Yeah, scattered across this massive empire.
Right. Forced to interact with all these different languages, belief systems.
Which is key. God intentionally put them in a global structure that required movement, that required interaction.
And the second implication,
that God's activity wasn't, confined to Jerusalem. It wasn't just happening at the temple.
The story of Esther and Mordecai happens in Susa.
Thousands of miles away. It shows God works in places people may never have even heard of. He's not tied down to one sacred spot.
So from the very start, the thinking was never small or local or tribal.
It was always global. And crucially, the plan was always to reach the nations through his people, even when they're subjects of a foreign empire.
So that scattering, which is often seen as a punishment, it's reframed here as a channel for global influence.
Exactly. That's the foundation. So if God's hand stretched that wide politically, the next question is, what about economically?
That is the perfect transition. Because if a massive government proves global reach, then massive infrastructure, massive trade, that proves global intention.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it gets really compelling. We move from the political map of Esther to the economic map of King Solomon.
We're talking about his international trade fleet, the ships that traveled to the legendary port of Ophir.
This is all detailed in 1 Kings, chapters 9 and 10.
Yes, and this is the critical nexus. The text is so specific about what these ships brought back.
It's not just treasure, it's an itemized list.
A very specific list.
Yeah.
1 Kings 10.22 says every 3 years the fleet came back with gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks.
And that list isn't just an inventory. You're saying it's a geographical roadmap.
It's hidden in plain sight.
The cargo is the giveaway, right? Because ivory, apes, and especially peacocks, they're from around there.
Not at all. They are not indigenous to the coastal Levant. This implies serious, long-distance maritime trade.
And the text says the journey took 3 years?
3 years. A 3-year round trip, which is why the exact location of Ophir has been debated by scholars for centuries.
So we're not talking about a quick trip down the coast to Egypt.
No. The goods, plus that 3-year time frame, they strongly suggest much more distant places.
Like where? What are the main theories?
The leading candidates are somewhere on the coast of East Africa, or, and this is the most popular theory, ports in modern-day India or Sri Lanka.
And the logistics support that.
They do. Ancient sailors would have had to use the seasonal monsoon winds.
So that would dictate when you could sail out and when you could sail back.
Exactly. It naturally forces a multi-year voyage. You couldn't just turn around and come home. And the presence of peacocks, for instance, is a huge pointer towards South Asia.
It brings the whole argument from just abstract wealth to like concrete biology.
It does. So Solomon's kingdom wasn't some closed-off regional system. It was intentionally plugged in to the farthest reaches of the ancient global economy.
Okay, so how do the sources synthesize this theologically? It's not just about Solomon getting rich.
No, not at all. The argument is that God's design was much more complex. Those trade routes, they effectively became, you could call them gospel roads.
Gospel routes, I like that. Channels of divine influence.
That's the idea. The purpose went way beyond just profit.
So if it wasn't just about gold, what else was being traded on those ships? Maybe things that weren't on the official manifest.
Knowledge, wisdom. The ships brought back ivory and apes, but the cultural exchange that came with them brought back so much more.
Solomon's wisdom was famous internationally, right? The Queen of Sheba and all that.
It was. And that wisdom, which included his administrative methods, his legal structures, his spiritual insights, it traveled. It traveled with the merchants, the sailors, the diplomats,
So God used commerce to introduce Israel to the world.
and just as importantly, to introduce Israel's God-given wisdom to the world.
It makes perfect sense. If you have trade partnerships that last for years, you're not just exchanging goods.
You're exchanging culture, language, ideas. It's an infrastructure of influence.
And this all provides a mechanism to fulfill that ancient promise made to Abraham.
In you, all the families of the earth will be blessed.
The ships became the literal conduits for that blessing. It elevates something as, mundane as economic activity into a spiritual lever.
Pushing divine influence out into the known world, yes.
Okay, so if Solomon's ships established the economic foundation for this global vision, we should shift to prophecy, because this outlook didn't just disappear when Israel's power faded.
Right. It persisted.
Where?
We can turn to the prophet Isaiah chapter 49, verse 12. He's looking far into the future here.
What does he say?
It's a powerful messianic prophecy about the ultimate gathering of people to God. He says, "Behold, these shall come from afar, and these from the land of Sinim."
Sinim. Let's focus on that word. It's only used once in the entire Bible.
Only once. And just like Ophir, its precise meaning is debated.
But the intent seems clear.
The intent is absolutely clear. Scholars guess it could be Aswan in southern Egypt, or maybe somewhere near the Black Sea.
But there's a more compelling interpretation, isn't there? One that really fits this global scale.
There is. Many believe it refers to China, or at least a region deep in the Far East. But honestly, the exact pin on the map isn't the most important part.
What's key is the context.
The context. Isaiah is naming places that were, for all intents and purposes, unknown, or at least completely inaccessible to the Israel of his day.
It proves God's vision stretched way beyond the local horizon of the prophets themselves.
It's a radical message. God is acknowledging populations that Israel couldn't possibly map or meet. He's seeing the millions in India, the billions in what would become China.
And he's promising, I will bring them to myself.
Yes,
So that's the connecting thread. Esther sets the geopolitical stage. Solomon uses trade to exchange wisdom. And Isaiah prophesies this distant future gathering.
it all points toward the ultimate fulfillment in the Great Commission.
Solomon reached nations with wealth.
And Jesus, who the sources describe as the ultimate king of the nations, reaches them with salvation. The directive to go and make disciples of all nations is that final borderless vision.
The fulfillment of what was dreamed of by Abraham and spoken by Isaiah.
Exactly. Proving the gospel belongs to the entire world.
Which brings us directly to the parallel between the ancient world and our own. The sources explicitly link Solomon's physical ships
Which took 3 years of commitment.
to the channels of movement we use today.
And we have to just pause and acknowledge the staggering difference in speed.
It's almost incomprehensible.
In Solomon's day, reaching India or Africa took immense resources and years of your life. Today, we have the modern version of those ships.
So what are they? What are these modern channels?
Well, the obvious ones are physical, commercial airplanes, global business, tourism, and maybe the most profound of all, immigration and global migration.
People are moving more today than at any other point in human history.
And they're carrying their culture, their language, and their beliefs with them everywhere they go.
And then there's the digital infrastructure, which is a whole other level.
That's the revolutionary factor. The contrast is thousands of miles over years versus reaching a continent in seconds.
With a video call.
Yes, the most potent ships today are digital. Social media, video platforms, instant messaging.
And the sources argue that the same God who used Solomon's state-sponsored trade is using these channels today.
Actively using them to continue spreading his influence globally.
That is the ultimate shift in perspective, isn't it? To frame our modern connectivity not just as a tool for business or entertainment, but as an intentional divine mechanism.
If trade routes were gospel routes back then, what does that make a global shipping lane or a high-speed fiber optic cable today?
The application becomes really personal then.
It's profound. If God used empires, nations, kings, the logical conclusion is that he can use your job
Your business, your creativity, your social media feed.
to reach across the world. You have instant access to the lands of Ophir and Sinim. You have no idea how far that influence might go.
But the sources assert your purpose is certainly larger than your city.
Absolutely.
So a quick recap for you listening. The God who set the stage in Esther, who connected Israel to Ophir with ships for this exchange of goods and wisdom, and who prophesied the gathering from the land of Sinim is still global and still moving.
The sources make it clear. You are part of a massive, global, interconnected plan.
And the final synthesis really encourages us to lift our vision, to expand our own borders. The ancient promise is reaching its fulfillment, and we are called to see the divine purpose in our modern global channels.
So with all that in mind, here is a final provocative thought for you to mull over. If the sources are correct that God intentionally uses global commerce and these massive channels of movement, whether ancient ships or the internet, for a hidden divine purpose, what is an unseen, unintended consequence of global connectivity happening right now? A technological or social friend we currently take for granted. That will fulfill a plan we won't even recognize until years later.
That really invites us to look at every mundane part of our interconnected world as a potential carrier of significance. That's a fascinating question to consider.
It is. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into God's global commerce and the enduring purpose behind international connection. We encourage you to explore these scriptures and these concepts further. We'll see you next time.
Have you ever been out, truly out, under a clear night sky, far from the city lights where you can actually see the Milky Way?
Oh, yeah.
You look up and it's overwhelming. You get that immediate feeling of being incredibly small.
You do. And the question that always follows that feeling, at least for me, is, am I insignificant? Am I just forgotten in all of that vastness?
Exactly. And that feeling is what we're jumping into today. We're going to do a deep dive into what we're calling the cosmic sermon.
Right. The core idea, which we see woven through so many biblical sources, is that the sky isn't silent. It's not just an empty void. It's an intentional message. God uses the heavens, the stars, the galaxies to speak, to guide, and to reveal his heart.
So that's our mission today. We're going to unpack the three major truths the cosmos preaches. First, how the heavens declare God's design and glory.
Then second, how the stars illustrate his unbreakable promises.
And finally, what the cosmos tells us about God's ultimate plan for judgment and, complete renewal.
It's all about seeing the sky, not just as a scientist, but through this lens of divine intention.
Okay, so let's start where the Bible starts. Genesis. The creation account is really God's first silent sermon to all of humanity.
It is. And in Genesis chapter 1, it's remarkably specific. When God makes the sun, moon, and stars, they aren't just for decoration. They're not just cosmic light bulbs.
They have a job.
They have an assignment. The text says they were put there for signs and seasons and for days and years. That implies an incredible level of intelligent order.
So when you look up, you're not seeing chaos. You're not looking at some cosmic accident.
No, you're seeing a declaration, a statement of design, of order, of immense power and beauty. Every single orbit, every rotation, it speaks of a mind at work.
And that idea gets this beautiful poetic treatment in the Psalms. Psalm 19 is probably the most famous, right? The heavens declare the glory of God.
Exactly. And what's fascinating about that passage is the universality of it. The Psalm says this sermon is preached day after day, night after night.
But without words.
Without any actual words. It says, there is no speech, nor are there words. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth.
So long before any written law, long before the Bible was compiled, God wrote this message of his glory across the sky for everyone to see. It's unavoidable.
It is. And this brings us right to this amazing tension, what I call a cosmic paradox, that you see in Psalm 8.
Okay.
The writer looks up at the moon and the stars, at all this vastness, and he just asks in complete astonishment, what is man that you are mindful of him?
That question hits so hard today. I mean, we know there are hundreds of billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars. The math just makes you feel like a speck of dust.
You feel like a rounding error.
Okay.
But then the Bible pivots so dramatically on this. You get to Isaiah 40, and God says to lift up your eyes on high and see who created these.
He's pointing back to the Creator.
And not just that, he says he brings out the starry host one by one and calls them each by name.
Wow, he names them.
He names them. The God who is orchestrating 100 billion galaxies knows every single star by name.
Yeah.
And that's the connection. If that God can manage the cosmos with that level of detail, he surely knows your name. He can surely bring order to your life
It connects the infinite to the intimate.
perfectly. And this idea of divine control is hammered home when God confronts Job. In chapter 38, he starts asking Job these impossible questions
About the stars, right?
about specific constellations. Yeah. He asks, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen the cords of Orion? He even mentions the Mazzaroth, which is likely the zodiac.
So why those? Why Pleiades and Orion?
Because in the ancient world, these were symbols of untamable, mysterious power. Orion, the great hunter, was this dominant force. The Pleiades were seen as this fixed, unchangeable cluster.
So God is saying, can you control the things that seem uncontrollable?
Exactly. It's a demonstration of ultimate cosmic sovereignty. When your life feels chaotic and out of control, the heavens are this constant, visible proof that God is still setting the schedule. He's still in charge.
Okay, so that's the first point. The cosmos declares God's glory and his control. Let's pivot now to the second major truth. How the stars become a kind of physical guarantee of his promises.
Right, we're shifting from creation to covenant. The stars aren't just a display of power anymore. They become a confirmation. The best example is Genesis 15.
With Abraham.
With Abraham. Here he is, he's old, he's childless, and he's been waiting on this promise to become a great nation. He's doubting. So God takes him outside his tent.
And tells him to look up.
Look up and count the stars if you're able to number them. And then comes the promise. So shall your offspring be.
Why the stars, though? Why not grains of sand on the seashore?
Well, he uses that later too.
Yeah.
But here, the stars work because of their sheer number, of course, but also their permanence. From a human perspective, they're constant. They don't change.
Right, they're unchangeable by human hands.
Exactly. So every single night when Abraham felt that doubt creeping in, he could just step outside and see this uncountable visual confirmation of God's promise. It was bigger than his current reality.
And that's the takeaway for us, right? That God's promise for you is always bigger and more constant than the doubt you see right in front of you.
Absolutely. And this theme of the stars as a sign extends to God's active guidance, his providence, which brings us, of course, to the most famous star in history,
The Star of Bethlehem.
Matthew chapter 2. We often see it on Christmas cards, but the reality is profound. God uses a star, a celestial event, to guide these Gentile magi wise men, astronomers maybe, from a foreign land.
All the way to a specific house in a specific town.
Think about that garden system. If God can use a light in the sky to guide people across nations to find Jesus, then his ability to guide your steps through prayer and his spirit is, well, it's undeniable. He works on a cosmic and a personal scale.
But that does bring up a really important tension. The Bible is also very clear about not confusing the creation with the creator. We're not supposed to get into astrology.
That's a critical distinction, and it's addressed head on in places like Amos 5. The people of Israel were starting to worship the host of heaven, looking to the stars for their destiny.
So they were practicing astrology.
Yes, and the prophet's command is simple and direct. Seek him who made the Pleiades and Orion. In other words, seek the maker, not the thing that was made. The stars are pointers to God, not gods themselves.
And Jeremiah connects that same idea of cosmic order to the stability of God's promises, doesn't he? He talks about the fixed laws of heaven and earth.
He does. He uses the reliability of the sunrise, the seasons, the stars in their courses as a symbol for God's own faithfulness. Just as the stars are fixed and sure, God's love, his covenant, remains absolutely sure. The universe is stable because he is faithful.
Okay, so the heavens declare his glory, they confirm his promises. Let's get to the third and final truth. If the stars announce the beginning and confirm the middle, what do they say about the end?
Now we're moving into eschatology, the study of the final things. And yes, the cosmos plays a huge role in God's final plan of judgment and renewal.
Jesus himself talked about this.
He did, very explicitly. In places like Luke 21 and Mark 13, he gives his followers specific cosmic signs to look for before his return. He says there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars.
And that the powers in heaven will be shaken. That imagery it's not calm, it's catastrophic. Why do the heavens, this great symbol of stability, have to be shaken?
It's a powerful statement that the current world, the current cosmos, is not permanent. It's temporary. Creation started with, let there be light, with this perfect order. But before the new dawned, it has to experience this sort of cosmic dissolution. The shaking shows that nothing is permanent except God's kingdom.
And then you get to the book of Revelation, and that imagery is just turned up to 11.
Oh, absolutely. The language is so dramatic. You have stars falling from the sky like figs from a tree. You have the star called wormwood poisoning the waters.
Yeah.
The dragon sweeping a third of the stars out of the sky.
It sounds like creation itself is coming undone.
It is. It's a picture of creation groaning, being purged. But the point behind all that upheaval is to show that the present heavens and earth will pass away, but God's purpose will stand. The instability of the old highlights the permanence of the new.
And that's where the hope comes in, Revelation 21. The destruction isn't the final word.
Not at all. It sets the stage for the new creation.
Yeah.
John sees a new heaven and a new earth. It brings the entire biblical story full circle.
The God who created the stars in Genesis is the same God who will recreate the entire cosmos.
Exactly. And the promises that come with it are just staggering. No more death, no more pain or crying, no more broken universe. God will make all things new.
So even in this massive cosmic story of creation and renewal, where do we fit in? It pulls us right back to that question from Psalm 8.
It does. The paradox returns. Because even in this universe that's being shaken and remade, humanity is crowned with glory and honor. We're not just cosmic dust. The heavens declare God's glory, but we are made to demonstrate his image. We're divine appointments in a cosmic plan.
So after this huge deep dive from Genesis to Revelation, let's try to synthesize this. For someone listening, when they see this cosmic sermon, what's the right response?
I think there are 4 clear takeaways. First, just worship with wonder. Don't just admire the stars. Worship the one who made them. Let creation fuel your devotion.
Okay, that makes sense. Second,
Live with promise. Remember Abraham. His promise was bigger than his doubt. God's word for your life is not limited by what you can see right now.
and third, from the Star of Bethlehem, we should walk with guidance.
Exactly. If God can guide people with a star, he can guide you with his spirit. If you feel lost, look up. Trust his leading.
And finally, because of the end of the story,
Finally, hope with expectation. This world, this universe, it isn't the final draft. A new heaven and a new earth are coming. What God started, he will finish. It gives us unshakable hope.
so when you step outside tonight and look up, remember that every star is a testimony.
Every galaxy is a sermon, preaching intentionally.
The God who created the entire universe is the same God who created you. The God who names the stars is the same God who calls your name.
And the God who holds galaxies together, who keeps them on their fixed course, is the very same God who's holding your life.
Live ready, live watchful, and live with hope. Have total confidence in his cosmic plan.
Thank you for hearing my sermon. And I pray for you guys every day. Jesus love you. Remember, Jesus is coming. Let's pray every day, every night. Amen. God bless you. Hit the subscribe button. Hit like.